All right, welcome back to the Run Dot Down over here on the Strickland YouTube channel. It's your boy Samuel here at FBL_Sam on Twitter. Got Jeff with me here today. Jeff is back from his hiatus due to the internet troubles, but find him at Frank Barrett 119 on Twitter. Yeah, RJ got extended today. We actually got some early news from believe it or not, Big Nick Energy, who tweeted out earlier today that there was going to be basically an ultimatum of between the Knicks and the Jazz of um that it was going to be either RJ was going to get extended today, or he was going to be in Donovan Mitchell trade going forward, whatever that meant. But it came to fruition here at the 11 o'clock hour of the day. But RJ got extended 4 years, $120 million. Yeah, I mean, officially breaks the Charlie Ward curse now. I know a lot of people mistakenly thought that Mitch had broken the Charlie Ward curse, but I think the Charlie Ward curse applies to first round draft picks that get extended. RJ is the first round draft pick to get a multi-year extension um since Charlie Ward. That's like 23 years now. So I mean, wow. Such a big day for the franchise going forward. I mean, shout out to Woj for kind of ruining this moment with the way he announced things and framed it, saying that,
What an asshole, man.
saying how, oh, this is gonna hinder talks now. Like, all right, man. Like, I really don't believe that RJ was as heavily involved in those talks as framed by Woj. But Woj has a job to do. He has to carry water. So like the loser he is, but we move forward. How you feel about this? I mean, I assume you're probably as excited as the rest of us, but yeah.
Yeah, super pumped. Just to comment on that real quick though, we've been saying and not just we, Strickland or Knicks fans, pretty much it's acknowledged that the Knicks have the best trade package for Mitchell. How many of those potential packages have involved RJ? Like the whole RJ being involved in the trade was, if the Knicks didn't want to give up a bunch of picks. But the most popular trade packages have all been, a bunch of picks and some combination of of Obi and or Grimes. Like we haven't really seen too much with RJ. I'm not saying that his name wasn't brought up at all, but like this idea that, oh God, now the Knicks are out of it for Mitchell is just so disingenuous and wrong. Like they're still clearly the favorite to get him if the Jazz trade for him. There's been no reports that the deal was going to live or die by RJ being included in the trade. So I didn't get that angle at all. It was just pure nonsense from Woj, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
Um,
and ZMP 323 is saying that the whole damn article about the extension is actually about the Donovan Mitchell trade negotiation, which is like very, very shameless by ESPN, but also doesn't surprise me because that's their whole thing. They really just care about the stars and these trades that go on instead of guys that are on the actual teams that are going to be going forward.
right, and getting like shitting on the Knicks, getting they gotta throw their punches in. Um, Regarding the Barrett extension, I just don't see how you could not be excited. Of course, Jeremy Cohen had a few really good tweets immediately after the news because he is one to do, especially when it comes to money and contract situations. But RJ isn't getting this extension because of what he's done. He's getting this extension because of what the Knicks think he can do. So first and foremost, every Knick fan should be encouraged by the fact that the stuff we can't see, the smartest people in charge of the Knicks have deemed him to be like an overwhelming positive and one deserving of getting a bunch of money. Like they're seeing all the work he's putting in, everything in preparation for not just this year, but his, NBA career going forward. And they're like, yeah, we want to give him $30 million a year to play basketball for us. Of course, if, you're analyzing this deal thinking it's based on what he's done in his first 3 seasons in the NBA, okay, you're not going to be as excited because, let's be frank, RJ doesn't deserve $30 million a year based on his absolute output through 3 seasons in the NBA. But like I just said, they're banking on his potential and him continuing to grow. And I've said this multiple times on Twitter. I think this front office has earned and deserves our trust. I think we can squabble about the Noel contract and the Fournier contract. Maybe that was a little bit too much, but all the draft picks, all the maneuvering they've done, even the contracts that we're going to squabble over, they were all short term. They all had team contracts at the end of them. This has been a really good front office, and I feel like we're not appreciating just how rare that's been as Knicks fans for the last 20 years. So if they say they're not just extending RJ to break the Charlie Ward curse, I'm not, I think that's a big deal for us as Knicks fans, but they don't have that emotional attachment. They're doing it because they think it's a good contract, and I think we should trust that.
Yeah, and I see the comments rolling. Don't worry, I'm going to get to the comments very, very soon. To your point about RJ and what he's shown so far, a lot of it has been to the team construction's credit. Shout out to the Strickland water bottle that Jeff is showing. Make sure y'all go check out the link in the description. Definitely got a whole bunch of those in stock for y'all to go celebrate his recent extension with. But to Jeff's credit about the about what RJ has shown, it's it hasn't been just because of him, but the team surrounding him. Obviously, it hasn't been the most optimized situation in terms of spacing, in terms of prioritization in the offense. Hopefully, this extension shows that they are going to prioritize him in the team building, in the offense, in just the whole grand scheme of things, because it feels like he's been on the back burner of a lot of these things. They've been pushing the whole Randle thing, and he was sitting in the corner for a lot of that Randle year, and then last year he got more of an optimized. He got more usage, I would say. It wasn't optimal because his defense struggled as a result of it, but they need to find that good balance of where he can be a focal point and he can still retain some of that good defense, and they still build the team in a way that's conducive to his success. And I think that's the main thing that they need to do going forward. And I feel like I'm hoping that this extension is a sign of things to come in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, to respond to what you just said, I think you could make the argument that no young player in recent memory has had a less conducive surrounding environment to succeed. If you go through a checklist of all the things you want in terms of building around somebody, and I know it's rare that teams, build around young players. And I'm not even implying that the Knicks were building around RJ, but just everybody's trying to put, high end lottery picks in positions to succeed. So you have these things that you want, for certain players. RJ got none of that. There was his first year, he was with all those forwards. There was no shooting. There was it wasn't he was going to come in and get his licks in and fail and stumble. He had to jump into the deep end because he was surrounded by guys who also all wanted the ball. So there wasn't going to be any, come on, RJ, okay, you failed, try again. It was if you're struggling, okay, we're going to run the ball, we're going to run the offense through Morris or Randle or Elfrid Payton. Frick, we had all
It was
these
bad. It
yeah,
was bad.
terrible options.
That first year was bad. And I mean, there was so many games in his first year where he would have it going too, and they would still go away from him. One big one that stuck out to me is there was a Miami game where he came out and he had 20 something in the first half and finished with 27 or something like that. There were so many games and it just was not an optimal situation, and it continued throughout. We've seen various iterations of it not being an optimal situation for him. So hopefully them paying him, it shows that they are buying his growth going forward, and they want to build a team that is going to help that going forward.
And something I actually haven't seen mentioned yet, but feels kind of big, he's now the highest paid player on the team. Like
That's
that's not a small deal. Like, you
no.
know, I know me and you are very much aligned in terms of how we feel about Randall, but like he can't even like in his mind he can't even play the like I'm the top dog like from a financial standpoint. Like, so I'm curious what you think. Like, let's
Keys
say
are
we
being
don't
handed
move Randall
over.
next month. Like that could go two very different ways, you know, like. And I am taken by your reaction. You don't think it's going to go the good way.
No, no, no. If you've seen any of my tweets, if you've seen any of these post game reactions from last season, you already know I have like no hope in Randall taking anything in the positive light. Like just from everything he's shown us, and like you could say the 2021 year, he still showed those habits, and we kind of ignored it because of success, which is something that happens when things are going really well. But when things are not going well, as we saw his first year here and last year here, I mean, it's just I don't have hope in that. And with RJ being the top dog financially, there is more, incentive for Thibodeau to, highlight him now more.
Yeah.
But with all those politics that go on behind the scene that we all discuss about, last year Tyrese was so big on, they're not going to bench the top guy that they paid, well,
Right.
there's a new guy who's the top guy getting paid now. Tyrese, weep and cry because you said this was not getting done. So if you're watching on the rerun, weep and cry. RJ got extended, so there's that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll see. I do want to get to some comments now because we do got a bunch piling in. Shout out to everyone that's tuning in. Let's see. Dirty Dancer says Angel's trying to make a fool out of us. I mean, yep. I mean, we've seen throughout, every single inkling that a Utah Jazz reporter puts out. It's just like it just screams desperation from Danny Ainge. I mean, we saw the Cavs, they were involved in a report for one day and they backed out of the trade negotiations because like no one can top our offers. That's it. Like Danny Ainge just has to accept that no one's gonna top the offer that we give him. So like he either has to take our offer or he just has to move on with Donovan Mitchell going into the season, which isn't gonna be pretty.
Yeah, I mean, and we know from his time in Boston that Ainge has no interest in living in this sort of purgatory where like because the Jazz aren't going to win 20 games next year if Mitchell's on the team. They're going to win, 30,
35.
35,
Yeah.
maybe more. Like, let's not pretend that the Jazz don't have a lot of good things. Like I know their roster is a little bit light, but and I know Quinn Snyder's gone, but there's still enough still there that the core like foundation, and they're still going to look like the Jazz, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and I mean, we're talking about a team that's won 50 plus games, 45 plus games the last 5 years. This is a good team, and like they might not be a playoff team next year, but they're not going to be a 20-win team. And Ainge does not want to have the 12th pick next year. Why would he? He wants to move ahead with, the rebuild. And Mitchell wants to be a Knick. We know he loves New York. We know
He's been
that
here the whole summer, basically.
Right. We know that unless, Ainge basically decides to accept 40 cents on the dollar, and which, by the way, sends a really bad message to other people who might want to come to Utah. Like if Mitchell's like, hey, I really want to go to New York. If they have the best offer, could you whatever? And Ainge is like, nah, fuck New York. Like I'm going to take a worse package just to spite them and send you somewhere you don't want to go. Why would NBA player, like an NBA player is kind of a fraternity, like they're going to hear about this. And so Ainge, if the Knicks do have the best offer, which they do, he either has to take it or he has to, like you said, go into the season with Mitchell. And I am very, very skeptical that he wants to go into the season with Mitchell. So
Schwinn is here to join us. Shout out Schwinn.
What's up, Schwinn?
What's up, Schwinn?
Not much. I thought I'd hop on because this extension happened literally right after we finished recording the pod. So that was great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Woj is a sick fuck, by the way. I had to just like bring that up because he is like still tweeting like frantically saying like the Jazz and the Knicks can still find a pathway to the Donovan Mitchell trade. It's just harder to do. Out of 179 NBA players who've had the poison pill restriction, only one, Devin Harris in 2008, was traded. This guy is like sick in the head. Like he's just making.
Why is he implying that RJ needs to be in the trade? I said this earlier. He was not in any of the trade packages. That RJ was never like this idea that RJ needs to be in the trade or we can't do the trade is ridiculous to me.
So, just a few thoughts. Woj is CAA, but he also obviously is like up Danny Ainge's ass crack. Yeah, or that. So it feels like there's a lot of conflicting messaging going on. Like he's carrying water for both parties here. I think is I feel like RJ was discussed, I think, which is fine. I think I have no problem with that. He's not Luka. He's not one of these guys where like you can't even have a conversation about him. And let's be real, like now that he's on a real fucking contract, you are not going to be like now when you discuss, would you trade him for, whatever, Donovan Mitchell, you're not going to be like, well, he's got 3 years left on the rookie deal. Like, no, that's not part of it. It's just his fucking contract now. So it's a different conversation. That being said, like, I think I would guess, this is just my guess, Ainge would have preferred to have RJ in the deal, but he also was not going to come down off of the ask of however many unprotected picks that he thinks he is, that fucking God has ordained that he deserves to have. But like what I would suspect happened is that Leon was like, look, we can discuss RJ, but it comes to this day, being today, I guess, August 29th. If it's not happening, like I'm going to extend this fucking guy and he's not going to be able to be part of this deal anymore. And I feel like Ainge thought he was bluffing. And I think Leon put his dick on the table. That's what I think happened. Like, I really just don't see what else could possibly have warranted this bizarre stream of, like, consciousness reporting, Jack Kerouac style from Woj. And, it seems like most people are caught off guard. But, like, I will say, even in the Woj story, if you read at the bottom, he's like, they are not seriously engaged with the other team, so there's a chance they could re-engage before training camp. Berman has already come out and basically like said there's obviously still pathways to make this deal. Anybody who has followed anyone on Knicks Twitter would know that there's still pathways to make this deal, or like at least to make the money work, right? Because the way Woj is reporting, it's almost like Utah just there's no package that RJ that they would take, and it's like that.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's never been the reporting. And if that was like, he has never fucking said anything about this the entire fucking summer. So now he's coming out.
He's been quiet as hell.
Yeah, so now he's coming out. Oh, this is so difficult now. It screams of somebody who is carrying water I think he's carrying water for both people here because he is
a lot of water carrying.
It feels like he's trying to convey the message of like the Knicks keeping RJ is great because they haven't re-signed anybody forever and whatever. But then he's also trying to carry water for Ainge to be like, now this is so complex now. How can we make this work? And it's like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. It seems I've come up with like 700 trades while taking shit that all work. So I don't think it's that hard, bud. But hey, if he wants to just tweet through it, I'm okay with that, I guess.
And as we were discussing before you got on, it seems likely, if not obvious, that Ainge would prefer to not go into the season with Mitchell on the roster, both for future team building reasons and also, he just hired a new coach to a 5-year deal, and is his first training camp really going to be like the Steven Silas first training camp with Harden, where he has one team and then Harden gets traded 10 games in and then boom, he's got a full new team and a full new context? Like, no, he wants him to have the team he's going to have for the whole season, right? Like that makes sense to me at least.
It makes sense to me too, but these NBA front offices, they are like so detached from reality sometimes, where they don't care about things like that sometimes.
And look, like, forget. I'm so sick of this. Fuck this shit. Like, instead of talking, like, we can talk about the Mitchell angle of it, but like, the contract, from what it sounds like, seems pretty fucking solid. So it's like
Cry Tyrese.
Yeah, 4 years, 120 million. That's including incentives. So this could just be like the Jaylen Brown deal.
Yeah, that's
but
what I said in the chat earlier.
Yeah, but the cap is way higher now. So like, whatever. Let's say I think Brown's was like 107 with incentives taken up to 120. If RJ
was it 110?
Well, I think no, it was above 110. I know. I think I've
It
seen
was 120.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
seen.
it was
I saw
120. Oh, okay.
it was initially reported as 115, and then I think it came out later that it was 120.
Okay.
So maybe this will come out a little bit higher. But like, if it's incentives stick up there, and the incentives are what, like all-star team, all defense,
all NBA.
Yeah, all NBA. So it's like, okay, if you're one of the 30 best players in the NBA, then yes, I will gladly I would love to give you all this money. But like, let's considering that a lot of the reporting, Berman and others was that they were like RJ and his agent were pushing for the max. Look, we don't know what happened all behind closed doors. Like, how close was RJ to being traded to Utah? I have no fucking clue. I would imagine not close. I just cannot imagine Danny Ainge and his gross little pygmy fucking hands wanting anything other than unprotected first round picks, more than anything. So I don't imagine very close, but like, I can imagine that RJ, look, we'll see. This will be 4 or 5 years down the line. We know we've seen extension stuff like this before, kind of sour relationships potentially, but the Knicks did lock him in at 4 years. It sounds like it's fully guaranteed. We'll see what the final details are. That's a pretty sweet extension. If it's 4 years, 120, that means he's locked in until 2027. He'll be 26 or 27 years old at that point. Like, I don't know. I mean, I think this is like, we can quibble about the efficiency and all that stuff, and he does have to get better for sure. He's got to improve, but like, I mean, if you told me at the start of the summer this would be the extension, I'd have been like, yeah, let's do that. That sounds good. I didn't understand people that like wanted to desperately give him the max. That didn't make sense to me either, but I think this is really solid. So yeah, I mean, good job, Leon. Hopefully it ages better than the last time I said I said he did a good job giving somebody an extension.
He has to get better, but like, the Knicks also have to we
make sure that his situation allows him to.
Right, exactly. Like, a lot of his, like, the analytics nerds have like the per dollar and like how many wins you're worth, et cetera,
Seth part now and shit like
and
that.
a lot of the reason that RJ rates out so badly in these is because of we have not prioritized him or built around him correctly. But like, if you're going to give him this contract, it's time to start making his talent and the analytical output match up more. There's been a big gap between those two things, in my opinion. There's a reason that all the people who watch 5 Knicks games a year only see their favorite team and some national TV games, and they just look at the stats and they're like, oh, RJ must suck. And then all the Knicks fans who watch 82 games are like, no, like, there's more there. Like, I'm not saying the Knicks fans are right. I'm not saying the nerds who don't watch are right. It's probably somewhere in between. But the reason the gap is so big, a lot of it has to do with how poorly the Knicks have built around him, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's something that I was highlighting in earlier too.
It's look, I agree with that, and that's true. Well, we can get back to that. I think in spite of that, RJ, like, we can't have 2 months of bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's like not about the circumstance. I mean, some of it's like, sure, it was hard adjusting to like not being on the ball as much, and look, I get that. But it's like
Julius
I
like
can't.
having shit
Yeah,
run down his legs.
yeah. I mean, look, I get all that, but like we can't have like because the last 2 years it's been like the first fucking quarter of the season is this painful slog where you're like, is this guy ever going to make a fucking shot again? And then yeah, he picks it up, but like it's got to be
From the
from the
jump.
start, from the
Yeah.
jump. But I agree with you, and I think look, this front office, we'll see. I don't buy this Mitchell thing where like, oh
No,
yeah,
for
we're
sure.
not.
Yeah.
They're not interested in getting Mitchell anymore. Like, I think that's bullshit. But I do think that again, I think Leon he played a hand. Ainge thought he was bluffing, and Leon was like, okay, well, extension, here we go. Like, I think that's what happened. But I still think they're going to try to get Mitchell. But I've said this consistently. I said this on the pod that's coming out tomorrow. You can't. Randle has to go, man. He's got to go.
Yeah.
If you're invested in RJ, then be invested in RJ. If you're on top of investing in RJ, going to trade for Mitchell and be invested in Mitchell, then be invested in these guys. And being invested in those guys means, like, as you pointed out, Jeff, creating like a team environment. And I'm not just talking about like warm fuzzies and good vibes and all that. I'm talking about like how the fuck you play on the court. Guys that are conducive to helping optimize and those players and the team as a collective group. And look, I don't want to do the Julius bashing thing. I think Julius is a talented player. I think he can go somewhere else and maybe it'll work out better for him than it did last year in New York. But I really think last year in New York was like, it's not just about how he played with the team. Like whatever his attitude, and like I don't really, people can say it's stupid, but there are fans that are just never going to forgive him. That's the fact. Like they're just fans that are never going to forgive him because what he did last year was insulting and it was demeaning to his teammates, and he like talked shit to the fans, which is never. If you talk shit to the fans, you better come out and put up like fucking 93 finals Jordan numbers for the rest of the year. All right, like I don't want to see whatever the hell he was doing this year. Okay, that's
I mean, after the thumbs down thing in those home games, after he averaged
terrible.
like 12 points on like 31% shooting.
Well, he had that Spurs game where I think he scored 3 points at home.
He was brutal.
Yeah,
like you can't talk shit to us and then like be like me on the court. Like that just doesn't work.
Yeah, like that's crazy.
Just to pose a question to the two of you, because all three of us are in agreement about Randle in general. Let's say the Knicks get a Mitchell trade done, and it's a bunch of unprotecteds, but Obi is the player in the trade. Do you think Randle still has to go, or do you think?
Yeah.
There's
literally no. It doesn't matter if we trade Mother Teresa. It doesn't matter if we trade fucking, if Aaron Judge goes in the trade, or it doesn't matter who goes in the trade. Randle has got to be gone. If you get Mitchell, it's only even more important that Randle is gone. Like it just becomes even more important.
For me, in that sense, you have to prioritize getting like Jared Vanderbilt or something from Utah in that sense. Like you just have to get someone.
Yeah. Or I mean, I don't care. Fucking if you can trade Randle to Phoenix and get Jay Crowder and some other shit.
Yeah.
Cool, great, fantastic. Let's go. Because you know what? Would I be thrilled that we drafted Obi 8th and then we never really gave him a chance, and before we even got a chance to give him a shot, he's gone? No, I wouldn't be thrilled about it, but at
gotta
least
move on.
I would be like, okay, they used Obi to get Mitchell. Let's be completely honest. As much as I love Obi, the odds that he becomes a perennial all-star caliber player, which is what Donovan Mitchell is. He's not a perennial all-NBA player. He's not a superstar. He's not one of the top 10 players in the league, but he's a perennial all-star caliber player, which is pretty damn good. That's top 30 player in the NBA. If he, like, the odds are Obi's never going to be that. And I love Obi, but the odds are just that's not what's in the cards for him. But if you do that, right, you use Obi to get Mitchell, and then you bring in a Crowder and say Saric, right, whatever the hell else you need to from Phoenix, okay, now I can buy into this. Okay, so now you've got two fours, effectively, that spread the floor, that space it out for these guys, that, especially Crowder, will play defense, is a quick decision maker with the ball, like not a ball stopper, which is massive. Like I'm okay with that. I'm good with like, okay, this is now a new team construct that we're going into, And if Tibbs is gonna have a gigantic problem with like 2 4s that aren't just gonna, fucking post up constantly or whatever the fuck. I don't even know what he wants from his fours, because with Obi, he's like go stand in the corner and shoot threes.
But
And
with
then with
Julius,
Drew,
he's like, go be a bruiser down low.
yeah, just be LeBron. Like, I don't know. Like it's whatever it is, I don't know. But yeah, I could buy into that and I'd be fine with that. But either
And
way,
mind you, all of us hate Jay Crowder.
yes, I like go look up my tweets and Crowder. I fucking hate that guy. But like there are, yeah, there like, or like, I mean, this is why I would just prefer to trade Grimes to Utah, because I feel like if you trade Grimes to Utah and then you have a Randle trade lined up or something, like it's a lot easier to find a backup for than a starting for. And like, let's be honest, I'm not the most enthusiastic about it, but Melo's out there. If you want to bring Melo back to be the backup for a year, that's not the worst thing in the world as a stopgap. So like, there are options out there. You could also just like, you don't need to have a 10-man rotation, right? Like if Grimes goes out, you'd still have IQ, maybe you still have Deuce, you still have Cam, and you'd have Hartenstein. Like that's 4 guys off the bench that are pretty legit. You can have a 9-man rotation and figure out, how to fill out the roster other than that. So I think the Knicks have options if they do make a Mitchell trade. Obviously, they have options if they don't make a Mitchell trade. But as it stands, like the RJ Barrett extension is exciting. I have consistently been pretty happy with the offseason to date, but they have less than a month now. The roster still needs to be consolidated and pared down. So we'll see what they do. I don't think they're done. I don't think this is the end of business, whether there's a Mitchell trade or not. I just have a very hard time believing they're like, yep, this is good. Roster's done. Let's go to camp. Like I'm not buying that for a second.
Yeah. Let's get some more comments because we got a whole bunch piled in. Vivek says Malika Andrews and her significant other are on vacation, so she won't be able to clown us like she did in July. Thank goodness for that. We got Dirty Dancer here. He says we are not dumb like many. Let the market reset. We still have a top tier package for the next one. Exactly. That's been the logic since people have been crying for the DeJounte Murray deal. I mean, it's funny enough, Atlanta probably would have one of the better packages for a Donovan Mitchell or a Kevin Durant, and they spent it on DeJounte Murray. So, it doesn't hurt to wait. That's my logic right there. Let's see what other comments we got here. Scott Dolan says, are you related to James Dolan by any chance? Are we buying the Woj report that RJ was for real on the table in a deal for Mitchell? We need to clarify on this point. I think we kind of already like discussed this point. He was probably discussed lightly, but not to the extent that Woj is pushing at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that he was really very seriously on the table. Like Schwinn said, I believe his name was like broached, because why wouldn't it be? But I just don't see this whole, now that RJ is extended, the Knicks don't have a plan B. Like I don't even think plan A has been affected at all in terms of what they're willing to give up. Sorry.
So no, I interrupted you. Are we buying the like? I don't know what it means for real on the table, because I do think, like, if we talked about this when you were on the pod, Jeff, but like if Leon if he's like, look, if I put RJ in a deal, what are we talking about here? Right? Like, what is the rest of the package? Because if the package was just like RJ, Fournier, 2 picks, right? I think Leon, you would have to seriously consider that if you're Leon. I think it's stupid to think that you wouldn't seriously consider that. But like, again, because Danny Ainge is this fucking pick whore who just wants to absolutely fuck the shit out of any unprotected pick he can, and get an STD from it. Like, because of all these things, like, there's no planet where I believe that it was a serious thing where it was like, we're on the cusp, like, oh, maybe there's no, like, it's just unbelievable to me that there was any potential for that. Like, I just don't believe it, because again, we know exactly what Ainge's MO is. He's like, his entire MO is, I don't budge. Like, you have to meet me where I set the price point, and I will never bring it down. And I think he really believed that Leon, and again, it's not about RJ, right? It's just the picks. I really think he thought Leon was one bluffing about the RJ extension thing, and I also think he still, maybe not, maybe now he knows, but like I really think he thought the closer and closer we get to camp, the more like James Dolan is going to stir from his jazz band infused stupor and force Leon Rose to trade the whole franchise for Donovan Mitchell. And I just don't think it's happening because I genuinely think like I none of us have insight into James Dolan's personal feelings and thoughts, but I just get the sense that he's kind of like happy with this front office and
Yeah, I mean, he's
yeah.
like been like out of the spotlight. Like, when's the last time you heard a James Dolan centered um headline that was like in a negative spin? It's like mainly the only thing I've heard him in the news about is about his new sphere that he's building or whatever it is. Is it a cube or a sphere that he's building in Vegas? Is it a cube?
Yeah, the Vegas one. Yep.
Yeah, that's the only time I've heard his name in the news, which is like, okay, like other than that, he's been like pretty much not involved in anything Knicks related, which has been like what this team has been and what this fan base has been dying for the last like what 10 years or so, I'd say, or even longer.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of found that there's a really big disconnect between the national view of the Knicks and their fans and what I've experienced in like the last year being a bigger part of the fan. I mean, I know Knicks Twitter isn't like everything, and I know there's a lot of, city people going to the games more than I am, and I'm sure they are more into the Stephen A. Smith form of being a Knicks fan, but this idea that like James Dolan's a nuisance as an owner, or that like Knicks fans are dying for Donovan Mitchell, or they're gonna like freaking show up to MSG with pitchforks. I haven't experienced it at all, and I don't know. It's one of the more misunderstood franchises in sports, if in my opinion and in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have encapsulated that better than I could have. Nemo says somewhere in town, Thibs is crying on the phone talking to Berman. I mean, according to that report about how he prefers Quentin Grimes over RJ, I mean, if you're going off that report, definitely he's crying somewhere.
I just don't get why Tibbs doesn't see RJ as like his new Jimmy Butler. Like
Because,
RJ
but like, do we actually think when Jimmy Butler was just a rising young player who was improving steadily but wasn't a star yet, do we really think that he was off the table and Tibbs loved him like that? Like, he might love him. I think he probably does love RJ, but he's also just like this guy who, for all, like, it's so crazy to me because I do think he's a good development coach and his track record of developing players is actually really fucking good. But I don't think he understands, like, because every leak from Berman, which is so obviously Tibbs, is just about like, oh, he loves RJ, oh, he loves Quickly, oh, he loves Grimes, but he would trade any of them for Donovan Mitchell. And it's like, this is why he's incapable of being a GM because he has no patience. He doesn't believe, like, he doesn't trust the internal improvement that is actually very evident under him to yield the level of player that he feels he absolutely needs right this second, right this minute, or he is going to fucking die to win. Like, and that's, he has no patience. But like, the reality of the situation is, if you give up the stuff that Tibbs apparently is like super comfortable giving up, if you just give all that up to get Donovan Mitchell, you're not any closer to eventually building a contending championship team. You're probably further away in the long run, even if you get closer in the short term. Like, it just, he's just so ass backwards with it, which is why it's a good thing that he's not involved in the trade negotiations.
That's actually a really good point, and something I don't think a lot of people know how to fully grasp. Like, an increase in second round equity doesn't 100% correlate with an increase in title equity. So there are trades where the Knicks acquire Mitchell and the chances that they make it past the first round increase, but their 5-year title equity actually decreases because they're just so capped as a second round team. And now all of a sudden they have nowhere to go from a player or a cap standpoint. So you can't just. This is why we've said, you've seen it all over the place. Mitchell is not the guy that you go absolutely all in for. Like, I think we all, to some degree, want him and would be thrilled if they got him. But you have to be somewhat tempered with it, because if you give up the entire war chest and it's just Brunson, Mitchell, RJ, and then whatever they get in like the Randle trade or whatever, then where do they go from there? Because that team's not winning anything ever. Like, it's going to make the second round, and we're just going to, and maybe some people would be happy with that. Maybe some people are so desperate for relevance and just, the mellow, the first 3 years of the mellow era where, yay, we made the playoffs every year. But I don't know. I think some of us are trying to build for something more and bigger.
Well, like, it's also just a thing of, like, is it okay? Am I allowed to just, like, root for players I really like and are fun and seem to, like, enjoy being Knicks and we drafted and developed? Like, isn't part of being a fan, like, part of being a fan is that you need to feel some type of connection to your team, right? And, like, we can all sit here and be like, I root for the laundry, but, like, it's not, it can't just be like, I don't care who's a Knick, like, I'll root for anybody. Because if, like, James Harden got traded to the Knicks in his prime, would he be the best player they've had since Patrick Ewing? Yeah, absolutely, he would have been. But I promise you, I would not have loved him like that. Like, I just wouldn't have. And trust me, like, I have talked myself into anything the Knicks do. So I'm sure that after like a year or two, I'd have been like, yeah, he's awesome, he's great, fucking great player. But like, it would never have been that same thing. And like, I think there's just something to the idea of, hey, look, like, we drafted this kid. He seems to really want to be here. The fans like him. We are fans. We like him. Like, can we just like chill and have him on the Knicks and have these young guys on the Knicks and like not do anything bananas? Is that okay? Like, are we allowed to just actually, like, every other team that does like a slow rebuild or whatever the hell it is, that seems fine. But when we do it, it's like this massive problem for some
and
reason.
and that's part of the disconnect that Jeff was talking about, because I've seen the other day, our good friend Chris Persianen kind of, he made a statement yesterday on Twitter in someone's mentions about like how he preferred keeping Obi rather than trading for Mitchell, and people kind of interpreted that as he sees Obi as like greater than Mitchell. But it's like, it speaks to your point, Schwinn, about like having that connection with the player of Obi. We drafted him. We're seeing the steady development of him. And like, that's part of the reason why everyone just like, they are like so overprotective, I want to say. And like, when they see Obi in trade talks, myself included, like when I saw Obi in that Shams report, I was like, oh hell no, we are not trading this guy Obi. Like, trade Randle to anywhere else, but like keep Obi, throw someone else in the deal. But like, yes, that connection that you make with these young players that we drafted, because like this is like the first time, I want to say, in like, I don't know how long, because like I'm only 23, so I don't even know like when's the last time like the Knicks have had like so many young players that like look to fill roles on a team that can be like there long term. But like, people are just so obsessed to like see what the next big thing is going to be.
The only Nick player I can remember from like being excited about a young player that we drafted standpoint in is Gallo. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that was a lot of fun. Like, his 3 years on the Knicks, especially the first half of the Amari year, that was a really fun team. I get why they went and got Melo, so I'm not going to begrudge them for it. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not as high on Melo as a lot of Knicks fans seem to be, but I get it. But yeah, I mean, and I think to add on to what you were saying, Sam, specifically with with IQ, Obi, and Grimes, is it's not just the little bit of excitement about a young guy that we drafted that we haven't had in the last 20 years, but to go along with that, every other franchise, it seems, when they draft someone, they get to see it unfold at least somewhat. Like, they get to be like, okay, these guys got a real chance and it flourished or it didn't flourish, but it happened, and we can feel confident that we gave it everything we had as a franchise. But like, we've seen the last 2 years, IQ and Obi not play as much as we think they should, especially Obi. Like, and you get a glimpse, like the first glimpse we get of it at the end of last season, and they're doing all these great things. And yes, I know some of it happened against like backups, yada yada, but like there's something there, and you just want to see it succeed or fail. You want to see it on your team. Like it would just, we're Knicks fans and we're kind of pessimists, and and it would just suck so bad to see these guys go to the Jazz and be as good as we think they can be. Like even if it meant we got Donovan Mitchell, on some level, it would just be like heartbreaking to be vindicated and be like, yes, IQ is as good as, and I know IQ probably isn't getting traded.
IQ is here for a while
right
now.
But like me and you, like we're the IQ, like we've been there. And just the thought of IQ going to another team and getting licks at point guard, which Tibbs refused to give him, and then just freaking balling his ass off, that would break my heart.
It's worse than that. It's worse than that, because even in the newest reporting, all the stuff from Berman, which again, I don't care. It's amazing to me that people still to this are like, how do you know it's from Tibbs? I don't know, because I'm not a fucking moron. But like in all of those articles, he talks about, and reports, and the podcast tour that he went on, he consistently mentioned how, they don't really see IQ as a point guard, and they would love to trade IQ for Donovan Mitchell and all these things. And I'm like, so Tibbs doesn't think he's a point guard. Tibbs doesn't think he's a starter. Tibbs is happy to ship him for Donovan Mitchell. Like, this is all Tibbs, because I promise you, Berman has no idea what the fuck Leon Rose or Worldwide West are thinking. He just doesn't. Like, I'm sorry, they're not leaking anything to Berman. The only person that's leaking anything to Berman is the guy who, just lights up like a Christmas tree the moment he sees Berman at a post-game press conference. So like it's worse than that, because it's not just about not seeing those guys. It would be like, oh great, we didn't get to see those guys in New York because our head coach had predetermined what their potential and what their ceiling was for performance, and decided that, Alec Burks at point is the move, Elfrid Payton at point is the move, got to play Julius Randle 79,000 minutes a night, all of these things, right? And then if they got traded and they succeeded somewhere else, it would just suck, because you were like there would not even be joy in that. Like it wouldn't even be like fun to be like, I always believed in this guy.
It's like frustration.
It would just suck. Like it would just really fucking suck. And like I haven't really ever felt that way, I don't think, about other Knicks players. Like when we traded Kristaps, I was very fine with that deal. I was like very much on board with it. I understood it. I didn't want to keep him at that point. I thought they got a pretty good return on him. When they traded Carmelo to OKC, I thought that was fine. I wanted to move on from him. It was time to move on. Yeah, it was time to move on. And so they got Mitchell Robinson out of the pick that they got in that deal. So all things considered, pretty decent return. And as we saw, Melo needed to go through his own kind of like rebirth as a player. Yeah. So like I like when they traded Shumpert and JR, right? Like I wasn't like
that deal. It kind of pissed me off because the players we got were like super garbage in that deal, and it wasn't like a 3 or 4 team deal where we got like Lou Amundsen and like Lance
for
Thomas.
Sure. We didn't get good value in that deal. Looking back at it, but like I wasn't like, oh my god, Shumpert's gonna blow up. Like, you know what I mean?
Shumpert was barely on one leg for like his whole Knicks tenure.
Yeah. So I didn't. But like I like genuinely feel guys like Obi and Quickly, even Grimes, who I'm like not as high on as other people. Like I think all of those guys, if they got traded, like I could totally see them going on to have awesome careers in the NBA. Like I love Frank and I'll always love Frank, but like I didn't, when the Knicks didn't re-sign him or bring him back, I was like upset about it a little bit just because I like Frank, but I wasn't worried like, oh my god, what if Frank blows up? Like I just think he is what he is. He's probably just gonna be a solid rotation piece who can defend guys, and hopefully if he gets hot from 3 at the right time, maybe that helps you out. But like these guys are way more than that to me. Or at least they seem like they have the ability to be way more. And even a guy like like Deuce, we haven't seen too much of yet. Or even like Cam Reddish, who hadn't really gotten a chance in New York until we had injuries and Tibbs was finally forced to play him a little bit. But like they like are intriguing enough talents where when I have to put them in a trade, I'm like consciously trying to think of like, okay, what is the value of this thing? I don't know. It would suck to see some of these guys, especially the ones we drafted, like go elsewhere and play well, especially because it seems like we've actually drafted pretty well over the last few years. I mean, even Jericho Sims is a guy like I feel pretty confident could be a solid backup 5 on a lot of teams.
Yeah. Let's get back to some more comments. Nemo has this one for you, Schwinn. Trade Julius to Man U.
No, we're good. We got Anthony. We're all set. I don't think Julius can play in midfield. I don't want him dribbling the ball off his dick in the middle of the park. So no, we're not going to do that. No, but no, like if Julius just didn't exist on this roster, I'd be so happy with this team. I'd be like, wow, this is fucking fun. This is fantastic. Yep. We're gonna have like Cam as the backup 4, and then we're gonna have like even with Rose, like, you know what I mean? There's just like, oh, okay, this would be fun. But like instead, it's just this thing where I'm like, every day I'm just like, so is he gone yet?
And if we went with a 9-man rotation, we could split up Brunson and RJ, and RJ could be the backup 4, kind of like with Cam, and that would unlock RJ in a new way in terms of like giving him good spacing and
post-up opportunities, man.
Right, and not to mention what starting Obi would do, like for the starting lineup, for him, for everything.
All that movement, that activity.
So because like when you think about a potential 1 through 3 of Brunson, Mitchell, and RJ, you're like, okay, you have all the creation you could want, all the initiation. There's only one basketball. Okay, you need a 4 and a 5 who will do, who
the dirty work
better, but without demanding the ball. Oh, where are we going to find that at power forward? Well, we have a 24-year-old who's already like, that's the one thing he's excelled at in his NBA career. Like, even when he's shooting 20% from 3, he makes teams better when he's out there, and he doesn't dominate the ball. He does it with his movement and with his quick decision and quick processing and his effort. And like
the ultimate connector.
Right. He is the ultimate connector for that position. I've actually never seen anything like it. It's a really rare and just awesome skill that he already has. And it's like, this is what we're seeing. This positive player is him not having figured out the other stuff. But like, if he figures out the other stuff, he's a really good player. Mm-hmm. And I don't get why the team just is trying to suppress that on all levels. It's incredibly frustrating.
Andy here says Leon doesn't want to trade Randle as basement trade value. Very understandable, but sometimes you just kind of gotta bite the bullet and take your L. That's my perspective on it. Everyone knows how I feel about Randle. I don't need to go on a whole spiel because you know me, I will go on that whole spiel, but I'll save it for my Twitter feed.
So I think he wants to trade Randle. Like I'm almost positive they want to trade Randle because I don't know why the Lakers athletic reporter out of nowhere
just brought that up out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, he was just like, oh yeah, like the Lakers have no interest in Julius Randle.
Like who even brought up Julius Randle?
Yeah, he brought that up out of nowhere, and then a few days later is when Stein had the report, right, that like, oh, but what if the Lakers could get like Bogdanovich and Fournier in a deal? And so when you hear that stuff from like different people, I just think that it's obvious to me they want to move Randle. I also think, and I've been saying this all summer, the best way to move Randle is not to broadcast to the entire fucking world that you are desperately trying to move Julius Randle. That's the worst way to do it. If you want an example of why that's a terrible way to do it,
John Collins,
he's stuck in Atlanta still, even though everybody in the NBA knows they wanted to trade him because you don't, like, you're never going to give a desperate person what they want, right? It's
especially at their price.
Yeah, so I think he wants to trade Randle. I agree.
But he can't put it out there.
Yeah, and like there was the other report too of like, oh, the Knicks don't want to attach draft assets to Randle.
Like where does that randomly just come from?
That's not coming from nowhere. Like that, they're obviously have discussed Randle. They have I don't know how they're doing it. I don't know if they're literally cold calling teams around the NBA to gauge their interest in Randle. But like they are obviously interested in moving Randle. I think they would like to move Julius Randle. Will they be able to do it? Will they? I have no idea. I hope so. I really, really hope so because I do not want to see him on the Knicks next year. But we'll see. That's why Leon gets paid 8 figures, and I do live broadcasts after Leon pays RJ Barrett $120 million.
I also want to plug and reiterate a point I made on the podcast with you, Schwinn, and plug it. A lot of people, when this commenter makes a comment like that, when Andy makes a comment like that, I agree. You don't want to trade Randle at like the basement value, but one thing you have to consider is if the Knicks trade Randle for 80 cents on the dollar, they're not trading. The trade isn't just Randle for 80 cents. It's Randle plus Obi playing 15 minutes a game for 80 cents on the dollar and Obi playing 35 minutes a game. So that matters. Those 20 minutes a game matter because all of a sudden Obi's ceiling goes up. His return on investment for his contract to the Knicks goes up. So it's not just what you're getting back for Randle in the trade. It's the effect the trade has on your team that you have to include that in your analysis of a potential trade. So even if the trade itself isn't the exact package you want to get back for Randle, sometimes you just have to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. And if the Knicks view trading Randle as from a roster talent perspective taking a step back, they might have to do that because it could potentially help them take 2 to 3 steps forward as a franchise. And sometimes you just have to lose a trade to help the franchise going forward.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. I just all the reporting on this is really I can't. It's just really shitty. I don't know if any other team could extend a player, a rookie or not a rookie, but off their rookie contract, and for the entire tenor of the reporting to be all about, well, this is why it makes trading for this other dude so complicated. Like, what are we doing, man? And people wonder why Knicks fans think they are covered differently. Like, I'm sorry, like they are covered differently. This is not normal. I have not seen one. I've never seen this before. I've never once seen a rookie getting, or again, a rookie contract guy get an extension being covered under the angle of like, what does it mean for trade talks? Especially because until 5 seconds ago, we were told all summer, other than by literally, I think, other than by Begley, and then very, very late Berman, was that Utah didn't have any interest in RJ, and the Knicks had no interest in trading him. Now, we've talked, we don't need to go over this again, but could that have changed? Sure. But why is it now that we're acting like the RJ Barrett piece was the biggest piece all along when that was never the reporting? That's just never been the reporting on it. I think it's really shitty. Especially for a thing that should be super positive and exciting for fans and all that kind of shit.
I just have to address this comment. This is just totally false, by the way. I just wanted to address this comment. JL Randle needs to be gone so we can stop hearing about his bounce back season he is supposedly going to have. He can do that on another team. Yep. Couldn't agree with you more. He can do that on Phoenix, Charlotte, wherever that needs to happen.
And he probably will, if he goes somewhere else. There are
Thanks, Zach.
There's so few people who hate Randle to the degree that they're like, oh, he sucks and he's going to suck anywhere he goes. It's just so clear that it's not working here. I don't get it from either perspective. Let's just move on. Let's, freaking rip off the Band-Aid. Let's go.
Yeah, it's just move on. That's exactly the point. You don't hang on. Look, when a relationship is over, it's over. It's no point trying to hold on to the spark. It's gone. So just don't. It's over. Again, he burned so many bridges here the last, whatever, how many years. But yeah, so We'll see.
I mean, I think the thing that really bugs fans the most, especially myself, is that like after the Hawk series, a lot of fans defended him, and for him to come out the next season the way he did, proving everyone right and proving us wrong and proving us to be stupid, I think that's like one thing that like stings the most, especially for myself, because I was like, you know what, Randle, it wasn't a fluke. You know what, Randle's gonna come out here next year. It's not gonna be as pretty, but it's still gonna be pretty effective. And I was wrong. We were all
Yeah, I
wrong.
mean that's a really good point. Like there was no uh, disconnect amongst the Knicks fan base after the Hawks series. It was
A
still
united front.
it was a united fan base. We were all thrilled about the season, maybe a little bit too high on our horse in terms of, oh, we're just going to keep getting better. Like, didn't occur to us that like there were multiple like realistic regression points that could and did happen, but nobody was like, oh yeah, Randle, he really let us down in that Hawk series. It was just let's keep like it was all positivity. And you know what? If he struggled like after that Hawk series in this last season, I don't even think Knicks fans would have cared about that. Like Knicks fans weren't booing him because he was struggling. Knicks fans were booing him for two reasons. One, his attitude sucked, and two, because of our head coach, any Randle minutes meant Obi wasn't playing. It's a zero sum outcome, those two, because our head coach is the most rigid coach in the entire NBA. And so a boo for Randle was almost a cheer for Obi. Like they just wanted to see Obi. We just wanted to see more Obi. And their way of doing that was reminding the coach that, hey, this guy you're playing 38 minutes a night sucks. Like he is not a good player this season. And so yeah, I mean like his to get back to point one, his attitude was awful. You don't thumbs down the fan base that literally went to bat for you after your horrible postseason.
It's he's somebody who very clearly cannot take personal responsibility for his actions and for how he played, because that's what he it was not his fault. It was Kemba's fault. It was the lineup's fault. It was, the fans' fault. It was everybody else's fault but Julius, right? Nobody else was to blame. No, or everybody else was to blame but Julius. Um, it's a clown show. He was a disaster last year. He was a terrible leader. He was a terrible teammate. I have no idea what he was like in the locker room. I would imagine he was probably terrible to be around. He was emotionally unstable. He was quite frankly unhinged with how he dealt with the media, how he dealt with fans, how he dealt with his teammates again. He even had his wife at one point going at like fucking CP on KFT.
Oh, I remember that. Oh my gosh.
Which was insane. Which like if she went after me, that would make sense. Like that would make complete sense.
Or me.
Yeah, like why are you going after CP is fucking crazy. It's just like I can't even like that year. It's like a functional version of Stephon Marbury or something. The last few years he was in New York. That's the only thing I can compare it to. Where it's like you're like this guy is just it's never gonna happen for him here. Can we trade him? But unfortunately, Julius is like Iron Man and he can play 7,000 minutes a game. Like it was so bad. Look, if he's here, which I would hate, I hope I'm wrong. I'm praying I'm wrong, and that there is some version of Julius that's going to be awesome and team first, and he's going to zip the ball around and all these things, and he's going to play defense really hard again, and he's going to shoot at least 35% from three or something. Like, I would love that. I would love to be wrong. I loved when he was amazing in 2020, 21, when I had previously been like, get rid of this fucking guy. I love that. I'm happy to be wrong. But like, I don't know, man. To bounce back the way that he would need to, and with all fans, like people don't even talk about this. I had heard Berman on he was on Locked On Knicks, and he was talking about maybe like Julius, like, gets his mind right, and he is away for the entire summer, and then he comes back, and the fans, it's not as big, like it's not as toxic. And I'm like, dude, I don't think you understand. Like, if he comes back and it's game one in the first quarter, and he does his patented, catch the ball at the elbow, fucking jab step, like he's
jab step,
jab step, then like do some stupid spin move
baseline
into a triple
fadeaway.
team. Yeah, whatever, like just some dumbass shit. And then he doesn't hustle back on defense. Like the first time that happens, he's going to start hearing it. He's going to, because like the way, like, how did it, like, the last time we saw him on the court, I'm pretty sure that, if correct me if I'm wrong, I think the last time we saw him on the court was that Utah game when he and Gobert, when he was like yelling at Gobert at the end of the game, and Gobert was
I
like,
remember that.
and at first Gobert thought, like, because like they bumped into each other, and Gobert was like, oh, like,
My fault.
how fucked up is that to be for everybody to take Gobert's side? Like, people love shitting on Rudy Gobert, and I remember watching that, and I was like, dude, what is Randle doing? Like, this makes no sense. And we were down like 10 points, dude. Just shut up, and they shut him down. I'm pretty sure after that game. So like,
I think he played one more game. I think, if I recall correctly, we beat Charlotte in Charlotte with Randle out, and then I think we got Charlotte at home, and he came back.
Oh my gosh, I remember that.
And we lost by like 20 to Charlotte at home after beating them on the road. Because I'm pretty sure Sam on the post game afterwards was like, so we beat Charlotte in Charlotte when Randle wasn't playing, but then we get killed by them at home.
We beat Miami
like,
too.
Yeah. So
you're right.
He played 30. He played 36 minutes.
So it was actually an even bigger disaster. His last two games at home were that Chicago game where he like threw.
Yes. Oh my gosh. He got pissed at the end of the game because IQ like was like giving the ball to like whoever else was like.
Well, Obi played a lot more, and then he
had like 17 or something, right?
And the crowd was chanting for Obi, and this was Julius's line in that game. By the way, he had 5 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists. He had 5 points on 1 of 9 shooting, and he was 3 of 6 at the free throw line. And then, then his last game was that Charlotte game that you're talking about. And it's just like, this guy was just miserable, man. He was just miserable all year. He was such an asshole to the fans. It's like he's insulting the fans with this effort. Like, you can see when a guy is just not trying, and he gave us a full year of not trying. And it was just ridiculous to watch. So
Schwinn, to that point, because me and Jeff, we discussed this before you came on. So now that RJ, because like a lot of the politics of last year of like why Randle had to still be prioritized was, he's the highest paid guy. How does it look if he's the highest paid guy and he's not like, getting prioritized in the offense if he's getting benched? RJ's now, big dollar maker, big money maker now on the team, highest paid guy. How do we think this all plays out in terms of, because my initial thought was, in terms of team building, they're going to prioritize RJ more in team building. In terms of the offense more, those politics from last year, they're gone now because, RJ just got this extension. So, is Tibbs going to prioritize him more on the offense? How does that look if Julius is still here come training camp? He's not the big dollar maker anymore. He can't be, those politics are not on his side. So how do you think that all plays in together? Because we kind of discussed that before you came on and we didn't get your thoughts on that. So how do you feel about all that?
I mean, I think if you pay RJ this amount of money, he's at least a building block, cornerstone, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. You have to prioritize it to an extent at that price, especially. And you should be invested in not just what he is, but what you're trying to develop him to become. And look, they lost sight of that at the start of last season. Whether that be front office, Tibbs, whatever, they've got to be on the same page because you've now paid them and you've paid Randle. If Randle's still here, we'll deal with that then. But like, RJ has to be a priority, and to be honest, he should be a much bigger priority than Julius fucking Randle. Like, I'm sorry, like it's absurd that this is even a conversation because
That's
again,
exactly.
yeah, it has to go beyond just the whatever statistical production, whatever you want to. It has to go beyond that because you invest a 28-year-old, right? I think Randall's 28. Is that correct?
About to be, I think.
Yeah,
Or,
he's about to be 28. He's 28 years old. He's likely going. He's some weird. Look, he's not as bad as he was last year, but he's not as good as he was in 2020, 2021. Okay, he's probably something in between, which is a good player. But that's it. He's just a good player. He's probably never going to be some base like. I think ideally we would all agree he's probably some type of like bench big who can come in and just punish opposing benches and like he could be awesome in that role. By the way, he can play 4. I think most non-dinosaur coaches would play 5 a bunch too. Like RJ is a 21-year-old about to just turned 22. I think he has shown you stretches and flashes of like very serious high-end play. It is on you as an organization now that you've invested in him to get that out of him on a consistent level. And part of that is, his individual performance. Part of that, as Jeff touched upon earlier, is like creating the conditions around him. Be it keeping the floor spaced, running plays for him consistently, like whatever the hell it is, right? It is on you now to really put him in those spots and optimize him and maximize him. Because you know what? Like maybe he can be your first star, second star, whatever the fuck it is. But maybe you also just need to maximize him as an asset down the line. Either way, whatever the fuck the outcome is, it behooves you to invest in him to a high degree. And part of that to me is again moving Julius. But like, even if Julius is here, you have to find a way. It's that simple to me.
And what Jeff was saying earlier too, and I don't know if Jeff you want to bring it up now, is like he asked me, do I think like Randle will take that well? Because I mean, we saw last year how like when other guys had it going. I mean, we can even look at those last couple games of the season. I mean,
I just think it's clear that, and I see this a lot when I see people talk about Randle, like even like with what Schwinn was just saying, Schwinn was just saying, oh, well, Randle isn't as good as he was in 2020, but he's not as bad as, or in 2020, 2021, but he's not as bad as he was in 2021, 2022. The thing is that with the players we have now, we don't want him to be either of those players. And it's so clear what Randle views himself as that it doesn't really matter which of those players he is. Because unless he drastically alters the way his entire outlook of basketball, which is what we need him to do, he's going to have the same negative impact on his teammates. We have Brunson now. We have RJ on $30 million a year deal. We don't need a power forward playing like LeBron. We don't. And but like in Randle's mind, I would bet everything I have to my name that in his mind, he's like, I just got to get back to being me. Like he's an NBA player. Of course, that's how he feels about himself. He thinks he's really good, and he should. He's the top 0.001% basketball player in the entire world. But I'm sorry, that's just not what the Knicks need right now. They don't need They don't need that player. They don't need a power forward who's going to play like LeBron. I'm sorry to repeat myself, but so on some level, it doesn't really matter. It's going to be a negative from a chemistry standpoint, unless you actually think there's a chance that Randle will say, all right, you know what? Like, I'm going to be like the Pelicans, Randle, and I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to roll to the basket a bunch. I'm going to screen a bunch, and I'm going to shoot some threes. No ISOing from the mid-range for me. I'm going to shut that down. That's good. That's not going to happen, but like, if that happened, sure, I'm sure that is the path to it working for him in New York.
And I think that's what a lot of people like are envisioning that he's going to become. And like a lot of people, they're like, well, once you get Mitchell, it's like he has to like submit to that role. It's like, well, it's not 2K. Like roles aren't just like automatically shifted like that. Like these players, they have egos, they have emotions.
Right.
Randle has like 2 of the biggest of those. So like, it's just like
I was on a pod with Schwinn a few months ago, and Schwinn, you actually said something that I thought was so profound at the time, and I didn't like fully grasp it, but you were like, man, how awesome would it have been if 2021 2022 happened first, and then
Yeah.
2020 2021 happened after, and we just had
Wow.
like a natural progression up, rather than like sort of
Yeah.
like that. And that's just like so true. Like, it's so funny how 2020 2021 is probably the best season we've had as a franchise aside from 2013 and this whole millennium. And you could make the argument that it actually hurt our path forward as a franchise. I don't know, it's just so weird.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it's that. I think people really exaggerate that too, like how bad last season was. It was bad, obviously, because it was disappointing. Like, I mean, if we're being completely fucking honest here, I really think it's mostly down to Tibbs and Randle. Now, I would put more blame on Randle because I think a player is inherently more impactful in basketball than a coach is. But those two were the crux of the entire issue. And yes, the blaming of the front office is fine to a certain degree, but it's also like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about like, why didn't they put a championship? Why didn't they assemble a championship roster? What path did they have to do that? And it's like, oh, they didn't sign DeRozan. I'll tell you what, I thank God every day they didn't sign that fucking loser. But what path do they have to do that? No, but I'll tell you what, that team finished. But they were like top 10-ish in defense, and they finished with the same offensive rating as they did the year before, all with Julius playing bottom of the barrel basketball. Okay, and they finished with a point differential of a 500 team. They finished 4 games below that. They finished 37-45. That team basically performed at an adequate level to at least make the play-in, and that is with their proverbial alleged best player playing easily, not even really a debate to me, like career worst level of basketball. To me, if I were looking at that, I might suggest that the additions that were made and the development of the young players and other various aspects maybe were largely good because they seem to do a decent job of offsetting the insane offensive decline of Julius Randle and to a large degree offsetting what was terrible, uninspired, horrific coaching on too many nights from Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
I mean the Pythag part of it, the expected win loss versus actual win loss. For one of the I did a Tibbs article like 2 months ago, and I mean even that that cannot be explained away by just bad luck variance. Like, we watched those close games that kept not going our way, and if you coach the end of those games like Tibbs coached those games, guess what? Those games aren't going to go your way. If freaking IQ in the bench, they're plus 15 for the game, and then with 6 minutes left, you're like, all right, it's Burks time. We're going to slow the ball down, not get into our offense until 10 seconds left on the shot clock, and Alec Burks is going to do something with a single screen relentlessly. It's not going to work out. And that's what he did for 70 games. So I'm sorry. I agree with you, Schwinn. Like, I agree with everything you just said. We were better than our record, but at the same time, we deserve to be from an actual win-loss standpoint, we deserve to look worse than our expected win-loss because we deserve to be a team that performed poorly in late and close games.
yep. I mean, I think this is a good spot to, end things off. We've been rolling for like an hour and 18 now, and I'm getting mighty hungry right now. So, shout out to everyone that tuned in. We had like almost like 50 viewers at one point. So, shout out to everyone that tuned in, everyone that left a comment. We tried to get as many as possible to keep, the conversation rolling. Make sure y'all check out the links in the description. We definitely got links to the Strickland merch shop. Make sure y'all pick up some RJ, water bottles like Jeff has to, celebrate this extension. We got the RJ hoodie. And just check out everything else we got over there. Make sure y'all check out Pod Strickland that is dropping tomorrow, right, Schwinn? Or what's
Yeah.
dropping tomorrow? Yeah, Pod
Yeah, Pod
Strickland.
Strickland's dropping tomorrow. I'm gonna record a reaction to all this tomorrow morning to stick in there at the beginning so that you're not just like, why the fuck did these guys talk about nothing related to the RJ extension at the top? So I'll do that tomorrow morning. Yeah.
And make sure y'all check that out. Make sure y'all like and subscribe. We will definitely, pump out more of these videos as we, get closer to possibly a Donovan Mitchell trade, whatever other Knicks news that drops. And, we got training camp in about less than a month. So, we'll definitely be around. So make sure y'all subscribe for that. Make sure y'all leave a like, and we will catch you guys next time. Peace.